Joined now by Chronic Hoosier, brought to you by Andy Moore Honda. Don't forget, get more to your door with AndyMooreHonda.com. How's it going, my friend?
Just another day in paradise, and here exchanging stories of hail and wind from the evening past. Just a
Yeah,
typical day in Indiana this summer.
I was just thinking, pretty good storm all night, lightning, thunder, and rain. It's got everything. The trilogy.
A little bit of hail, a little bit of wind damage. A buddy of mine here at work talking about his dock getting blown off its anchors last night out at Fairfax Marina. He's on a houseboat here during the week, and
Really?
that got set adrift by the storm. Yeah, it was a pretty rowdy one, but pretty much on par for what we've seen so far this summer. It's been wild for sure.
Yeah, I didn't know it had gotten that testy.
I didn't either. It looked like as I was watching it, it was just kind of sitting over campus and the county line for most of the night last night. We had blueberry-sized hail hitting every side of the house intermittently, but it just would not go away.
Absolutely. Well, that's what you get, right? You said it, par for the course. But always into each life, a little rain must fall.
Yeah, it's wild. On a season when the grass was browning out in the end of May. Now it's like at a record pace in mid-July. Indiana's a little drunk this summer, but c'est la vie. Here we are talking about the weather and not anything untoward with the Hoosiers. So for off-season, probably as good as you could hope for.
So what's new in Chronic's life?
We are counting down the days. B-Town summer is fast drawing to a close here. I'm looking at the community school starting up here in about 2 weeks, and on par for my family. We just found out last night my freshman's got a broken foot in 2 places, so he's on the pup list right now for the Bloomington South Panthers football. But that's second out of the last 3 years we've encountered a situation like that. So just dealing with it. Just getting ready for the recovery and the comeback.
Yeah, it's that time of year when school starts, the sports starts, and then the injuries start coming. No matter if you're volleyball, football, doesn't matter. It's cross country. There's always something to be iced down.
Oh yeah, activity starts ramping up. You're working on conditioning, and lo and behold, injuries start popping up. It's something that all programs have to deal with. Not the least of which the Bloomington South freshman team, but you see it across the country at all levels, and it's one of those things where you just kind of hold your breath, cross your fingers, and if you're Indiana, hope that none of your key guys end up taking those knocks that cost them some of this vital time, because this is really when the magic happens, when teams are built. Obviously, you've got to have availability of your guys, and as everybody's back on campus for the most part now, doing their camp stuff, doing their conditioning stuff, you got to get bigger, stronger, faster, but more important than anything, you got to stay healthy.
Absolutely. Football season coming around, like you said, slowly. We've got the Big Ten football media days happening next week, the 25th and 26th, up at Lucas Oil Stadium. So that's I think everybody else has already had their media days. ACC, SEC just wrapped up. I know the Big 12 just did in Dallas, so the Big 10 will be kind of the last of the big boys to get through that period. That's coming up next week, which is kind of the almost official. I don't want to call it the official end of summer, but it kind of is in my mind.
No, it absolutely is. I mean, this is when things really start ramping up in earnest. When the camps come in full session. Right now it's quote unquote involuntary workouts and whatnot. But make no mistake, those guys are putting in the work right now with the staffs, with the trainers, the conditioners, getting their bodies ready for the season. And once you get past media days, you're pretty much barreling towards that opening kickoff. Still got about 6 weeks left, but this is when the teams are truly built, in the most fundamental sense. And for a team like Indiana, it's absolutely imperative that they get it right this year, because there's what I expect to be an increasingly hot seat in Memorial Stadium, and Lord knows schedule doesn't do them a whole lot of favors this year once the conference season starts up. So it's going to take some development. We've been a lot of movement on both sides of the football, on the bench as well as in the box, and they've only got so much time to figure out what they've got and how to get it right here, and hopefully show some improvements from last season.
I do have to say I don't like to talk badly about the football program because the football program has kind of been handcuffed by the school for a long time. So they're always starting with one hand behind their back. But now as football continues to be so important in college athletics, Indiana has to do something at some point, you think. And I'm not blaming this on Tom Allen. I'm not even talking about Tom Allen. I'm talking about Indiana football, period. It stinks. It's always stunk for the most part. But that falls back on Indiana to do something about that.
You know, I will half-heartedly agree with that. You know, as we've seen in the last decade,
and I half-heartedly support it. So
as we've seen in the last decade, you know, there is some modicum of success that's possible for a program
yes,
like Indiana. Obviously, it's going to be extraordinarily challenging, just with the circumstances of the conference, the divisions, and everything else, geographical challenges, just with the number of major programs surrounding Indiana and the recruiting pool they all draw from. But at the end of the day, you know, we've seen a team that can regularly become bowl eligible. We've seen a team that has shown it's capable of competing with some of the best in the league, and we've also seen just how fleeting that success can be. And I think that's the paradox of Indiana football. Is, you know, for decades we have fans have clung to the belief that, you know, if you do the right things, if you make the right moves, if you make the right investments, the right hires, you can improve your stars. And we've seen that recently, but we've also seen how quickly that can slip away, you know, whether it be a couple of key positions or even coordinators or staff members. You've got to have the right pieces in place in order to compete. And it's such a precarious position for a program like Indiana. But they've, you know, fans have tasted that success as recently as 2020. Um, and just how quickly it arrived, it's completely disappeared. So I think the key this year is, you know, finding some way to get back to being competitive on a week in, week out basis. Try to steal some wins when you can. Definitely win the games you're favored. But more than anything, play with some respectability. You know, and the challenge for Indiana is we've seen them on the cusp, and then one or two key injuries, and all of a sudden the sky's falling on them. You got to get past that, and that's talent, and that's depth of talent. And you know, we've seen a lot of movement with the portal era and everything else. Show me what you got. Show me how you can develop what you've got, and show me how you can get better as the season goes on. And I think that's going to be my keys heading into this season. I don't know that there's a magic number that you have to reach in order to consider it a success, but I think for most people, the eye test tells you whether or not they're fielding a competitive football team. And quite frankly, in the last couple of years, they've just fallen too short of that baseline goal.
Yeah, and not knowing, I think, is driven fans as crazy as anything because they know nothing about the team going into each year after year. It's been the same thing. Not going to name a quarterback. Not, and after so long, that starts to just grate on people. It's like, you know what? We're tired of this game. That game has just run its course, and it has run its course. And not knowing what the team has it's not acceptable at this stage. You're too far in to the program to there be complete unknowns and not know what the expectations are.
Yeah, you know, we talk a lot in the basketball world how important continuity can be from season to season, and that's something Indiana football in particular has really struggled with because you just don't know. There's not that standard maturation process where once guys become juniors and seniors, you fully expect them to be ready to start competing for the starting positions because, quite frankly, either those guys aren't sticking around or they've just not shown anything in those years leading up to that make you believe that they're going to be ready for that. And it all goes back to recruiting at the end of the day. You know, Kevin Wilson, for all his faults, had shown just how imperative it is to upgrade your talent. And you saw that reflected not just in the star rankings that the recruits were coming in with, but look at the way they leave the program. Look at the number of guys that found themselves on the draft boards. You know, that found themselves getting free agent contracts after they left the program going undrafted. You've got to be able to develop the talent that you have. At the same time, you've got to be able to improve the talent both through recruiting and transfers. So, you know, the situation now is you've got so many open bodies or so many open spots and new bodies come in. You really have no idea what to expect because while the talent's going to be supremely important, eventually you've got to find a cohesive unit that's capable of playing together and for each other. And we saw that in the past as the program was ascendant. And Tom Allen and his staff are going to have to find a way to get that sense of brotherhood back on the field, at least in how it reflects in the way that they're playing for each other and competing. Because quite honestly, too often they fail to compete.